people usually don't convert on the first ad exposure that they see. So you really, really do want to make sure that there are so many other ways that they can get to that information. Advertising helps, but like if you look at what your journey is, and really it's a great exercise if you don't have a customer journey laid out on paper, and looking at that not just for paid media channels, but also here's what we're doing foundational, like the owned media, and then here's what earned media is doing that they're really pushing out, and here's their focus.
The fundamentals of effective B2B marketing have not changed, but in 2026, many brands are losing sight of them. As platforms become more crowded and ad costs continue to rise, organizations are increasingly over-investing in paid media while under-investing in the strategic groundwork that makes paid campaigns perform. This imbalance leads to wasted spend, mixed messages, and weaker results, just as audiences are becoming more selective. So how can B2B marketers leverage paid media to drive more efficient, sustainable growth? Welcome to this episode of the B2B Marketers on a Mission podcast, and I'm your host, Christian Klett. Today, I'll be talking to Andrea Ness, who will be answering this question. She's the head of media at DDM Marketing and Communications, where she helps drive digital marketing initiatives for B2B organizations. Tune in to find out more about what this B2B Marketers mission is. Andrea Ness, welcome to the show.
Very good to be here.
Really good to have you on. I mean, we've had such a great pre-interview conversation where we laughed so much about all these random topics, and that was already very telling of what's to come. But I'm really looking forward to this conversation. It's a very pertinent one. I think it's something that B2B marketing teams really need to be paying attention to as they move forward at the time of this recording at the beginning of 2026. All right, so let's jump right in and start the interview. So, Andrea, you're on a mission, I would say, to help B2B companies deliver high-impact marketing campaigns that drive measurable results. For this conversation, I'd like to zero in on the topic of how rethinking the role of paid media can drive more efficient, sustainable growth. So I'd like to kick off the conversation with two questions, and I'm happy to repeat them. Right? So question number one, why do you think paid media should function as an extension of brand trust rather than the centerpiece of a marketing strategy? And the follow-up question is, where do you see many B2B marketing teams struggle?
All right, I will start with round one, but with the first one, usually when someone hears media campaign, they go straight to the media teams and going to tactics where we really want to back up and just say, paid media works to amplify the message that you're trying to put out there, not to create the message. So if you don't have those strong messaging and those components in place, or what we like to say, your house in order, we're not going to be the best at creating the message, but only taking really resonating messaging and putting it out to the world. So we call paid media more like a distribution engine, and it's not the message itself, and it's also, to really, really underline brand narrative. Is if your brand narrative isn't strong, your paid media just amplifies people to get confused. One of the things that we like to talk about with clients is that audiences see thousands of messages every day, so even if we might be in the right channels, with everyone else, if it doesn't resonate, if it doesn't align, if it doesn't connect and strong, then they're just trying to pass it by with the hundreds and thousands of others. So really, really, what is that message component? What are you trying to tell them? When are you trying to tell them that? And then we just use paid media, the tactics for paid media, just to make sure that we're amplifying that message to the right people. So that's with your first question. What your second one was?
Where do you see a lot of, based on that, where do you see a lot of B2B marketing teams struggle?
So one of the things we keep on hearing over and over again, because again, I know clients really they're focused on revenue, they're focused on the end goal. But, when we hear a lot of times when we hear we need, consistently more leads, more conversions, more revenue, we got to go straight to the end, when what we're thinking about and what we have to bring clients back to is what is that customer journey? And for us to be able to move them through the funnel, we can't just go straight to the end and asking them to do something when they don't even have that trust, or they're not even, in the consideration journey yet. So with B2B especially, like consumers, sometimes it's a quicker cycle, but with B2B, your cycles could be like 6 to 18 months, even longer. So if you're not talking to them throughout each of the journey and building that trust along the way, we're going to be losing them if you go straight to do this and give us your contact information. We learned, especially now, especially with new generations of people, they don't always like filling out forms. They like to do their own research in many different ways. And if you're not there in each of those moments as they're going through and building that trust wherever they're going to get those information points, just going out and saying do this now, deadline approaching, they're not gonna be ready to do the end goal. So
absolutely, yeah.
Another thing that we notice is more like the fragmented, the messaging. So and it's just, that's why we really, really hone in on integrated marketing, because it really is, if we're ready, if we have our key messages in place, it's not just what the ads should say, it's in every form of their communications. And sometimes people don't think that way because businesses are in their different teams. They have their sales team, they have their PR team and communications team. They have, their web team, they have, all these other teams. But when we are ready to say, these are going to be our key messages we're going to hit out there, we have to make sure that all of these teams are aligned and the messaging resonates. So no matter where your audience goes to or where they go out to seek information, you don't want to lose them by they seen an ad with this message, but then they go to your website and they don't see it anymore. Or even their organic channels, if you're not talking about even those points in there, and we also even make sure clients know of even public relations teams and whatnot, is it in your boilerplates anymore? Is there ways that we can integrate it in some of your content marketing or the articles that you're putting out there, or the thought leadership, articles that your leadership team's putting out there? So it really is taking those the key components and what you have those down and what you want your elevator pitch to be known for, and making sure every channel, especially sales teams too, they're the ones that are on the ground. They're the ones that are, talking to them when they're in consideration, almost out of consideration. Are they saying the same points that we are trying to say up front? And as your leadership, team also, if they're doing speaking points, having those one-on-one conversations, are they also bringing down those key messages so everyone can get, the same type of elevator pitch when they see it?
Absolutely. It's amazing to me that you see this across the board, how the messaging tends to be inconsistent across the different channels. I don't know where that somehow got lost in translation. That that okay, for each channel the message should be different, and that's to your point, nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah, and sometimes it's sometimes there are going to be other messages, take organic social, for instance. It's doing multiple jobs. It's not just selling. It is, bringing the culture component. It's probably also talking to, possible future employees. And so it is doing other things in general. But if there is a sales point when, and what we've learned is that when people hit consideration stages, they're not ready to fill out a form right yet. They're not ready to even call you on the phone, but they will connect with your socials to see, just as more reminders. But so if you're not also seeing some of those marketing messages in there as well, you're gonna lose them, and they're just going to have that connection. And we always like to say is when we put ads out in market, again, very rarely are they going to resonate the first thing. They're going to take that call to action, especially for B2B. It's different for retail, the big sales, but for B2B, the expectation is they see your ad resonate. It might be something, when I'm out of work, maybe I'll go, look into this. But, is that message really, really saying what you want it to say? And when they want to organically come back and find you later, wherever they go to find, is that going to be connecting, or is it going to be a completely different scenario where they can't even get to where you want them to go to follow the journey?
No, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. I did have two follow-up questions for you based on everything that you've said in the past couple of minutes. So the first one is I've been marketing for a little bit, especially B2B marketing, and I'm sure it's the same with you, but marketing has become so much more complex than when we started out. Just from your perspective and your experience, especially in the paid media landscape, how has technology impacted the the way that teams go about dealing with paid media. Maybe talk about the advantages and also how it's been a little bit detrimental to them as well.
Yeah, I would say that just the many different options and how audiences are so different, and how like from where I learned how to how to connect with people is completely different from how like the new age is connecting, where they are really like like a lot of people like they less phone calls, less email addresses. They really learn from technology. They really learn from video. Like video learning is a really key adapter to that. Also reaching out even through like like DMs of social media, those quick interactions where they're not ready, when like we're like on the B2B side, we're always used to like lead forms, going to the website, doing that. And sometimes they just don't want to leave the environments that they're in. And if you're not allowing them to learn from the environments that they're in too, as well, then we're going to be losing out. And a lot of times too, when they're ready for, they want to know a quick answer, with chat GPT, with everything else, they can get those answers fast. So if you're not there and present and responding in an efficient manner, like then you're going to lose them, because there's going to be another competitor that does have like the chat on their website that they can get a quick answer, where they don't feel comfortable calling on a phone, and knowing when you call on the phone, you're going to have to be a waiting period to talk to someone, and you might not get a human. So it's just everyone has like their own ways of connecting, and to get information and to make sure that you are available in those information cycles, rather than just like, let's just take them to a form and then maybe a day later we'll have someone follow up with them. So you just want to make sure that you're present in the moments where they're ready to make those choices.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I had this experience yesterday when I was trying to call a client. And then I heard this voice after it rang like 3 times. And I thought, okay, it's going to be the client. And so I started talking. And then I realized, like, oh, this person is not available at the moment. If you leave your name and tell me what this call is about, I can see if this person's available. I'm like, oh, okay, AI, right? So I had
Yeah.
to tell the AI, okay, this is my name, and this is the reason why I'm calling. And it pauses for 2 seconds and says, thank you. I will try to connect you. And then there's this little like medley playing in the background, and then it says, person is not available. Please leave a message. I'm like, wow, that was a lot of like hoops to jump through, right? Like,
Yes, exactly.
but to your point, right? To your point, it's a lot of like waiting and mhm.
And I would say too, like even like, from moving to, making a phone call, knowing that you're going to get, a customer service level, but then to get a real answer, you might have to ask for a manager and go up to that level. Back in the day, I would tell people, because I have really, experience on the social media side. I'm like, you know what, if you go straight to the social media inboxes, you're going to get a quicker, faster response from a different one, because that's managed by PR teams and communications channels, and they have to be really, but what they can respond to like is going to be at that already a tier 2 or tier 3 level. So it really is, everything's changing all the time, and you just want to make sure that when they're ready, when they ask a question, if you're not there to answer that question, then someone else is going to answer that question for you.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely right. All right, so that was my first question. The second question, which you kind of already brought up, but because teams are dealing with this all the time, and I love that you brought it up. How do you deal with pushback? And what I mean when I say pushback, it's like, how do you deal with senior management in B2B organizations, of which there are many, that are going to look at your media campaign and your outreach campaign and say, okay, well, Andrea, that's all nice and good, but like, how do we get to revenue quickly? What's the ROI on this? Like, we need leads. We don't need
Yes.
we don't need engagement. We don't need engagement and sharing. We need leads. Like, how do you deal with that kind of pushback, and how do you get them to understand that this takes time?
It is, yeah. It really is an educational moment, because our clients are experts at their fields and what they do, and so we really do also want to coming in as a partner, that we also want to showcase our marketing expertise, and like, you do this really well, and while you do, your job really well, let us go in and also give you some information, education of why if we go straight to the call to action, why that is going to be less resonant than if we come in and say, let's talk. We know they start here in the research phase, building awareness, and now it's time to build trust and consideration and answering, exactly when they're in that consideration phase, what are the key points that you need to tell them there, and why you need to message them differently, and why sometimes it's not good to go straight to the call to action, because when they see that, then they're going to be more likely to be like, you're bombarding me. I'm not ready for the sales thing. I just want information. So it's just like, how do we stay top of mind? And especially in that consideration cycle, which is the longest cycle, it really is building trust. So like, how do you also offer information that's what's in it for them, not what's in it for our clients? To be like, you know what, you really care about me, and you're not like begging for me to contact you right away, but you're giving me something, information that's very like that I need in the moment, that's helping with my job, that's helping me with doing this stuff. So then when I do need you, maybe like in that cycle period, I'm going to think of you first, because you were there providing that information and showcasing that expertise, and I saw you at that event, and just like you're building up those points to build that trust, so when they are ready to receive you in their moment, that you'll be one of the ones that they call. So it really is trying to really think of that journey, and every journey is different per client, but to really look at like, here's the communications channels that are happening, both paid, but also, like on the ground, and, organic and everything else. And like, how do we also make sure that we're moving them along in a way that they're ready for it?
Yeah. You've laid that out beautifully. That tells me that you've dealt with this situation many times before.
We do it all the time. And, we really want to be stewards of our clients' money. So we know, like, you're going to give us the same amount of money to go into market here, or maybe getting the house in order, getting our messaging, like maybe how do we resonate? How do we give them information that's what's in it for them? And then we go into market and spend the same amount of money that we would be right away. And the results are just even better, because we're talking to people that are not just early, but they're already thinking about you, because we made them think about you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to move us along to the next question about key pitfalls that marketing teams should avoid, and what should they be doing instead?
Okay, so there's going to be a few of them. One of the ones is sort of, what we just mentioned is too, is like the going into doing a marketing campaign without the strategic position that you have before you get started. So, wanting to make sure that you have clear market positioning, you have really good messaging frameworks that that this is how you should be talking about them here. And sometimes it's going to be messaging, differently based on different audiences for a whole unique, types of instances. But you're not just focusing on, these ads are really pretty, let's get them out there. But do they resonate? Do they connect? Like, are they going to make people stop and look and listen? Rather than just pass by, because they're seeing thousands of other ads as well. So like, really thinking about that. Another thing is what we talked about before, is just like the over reliance on paid media. We're treating ads as the primary growth lever, and then that is our answer. No matter what we have, like what the house looks like, what the levers that we have are in place, but just so instead, what we want to use it is just to amplify the really strong messaging that we all believe in, and we know it's going to work, and we know we see it, tested and working, and then to be able to get that out there. And then also just, the pitfall number 3 would be like more like measuring only on short-term metrics. So like, we're only focused on the leads, like that is our answer. And that's only what we care about, we're reporting on, when there is so much that gets them through each of those ones, like how much engagement, how much audience growth did we have throughout, where are they at in the funnel, where they were, during the baseline, metrics where we saw them. So just really looking at like the different ways that we know that they're in the funnel, they're listening, they're understanding.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, there we go, man. Like, we're only focusing on leads. That's all I want to hear. That's all I want to hear.
And we know our clients have a bottom line, and and it's like, and their job's on the line, and this is what their focus is on doing it too. But if we don't have that upfront cycle, moving that journey, knowing, especially if we know their cycle of like 18 months, like to get them to the leads, we should be talking, to them a year ago, to get them through, and then just really focusing on.
Well, it's a process too, isn't it? Right. Yep. Like, and I think you brought this up earlier in the conversation, that especially in B2B, we're looking at a buying committee of anywhere between 6 to 10 people,
Yeah.
right? This isn't
Mhm.
somebody that makes a decision on impulse, like you go into a supermarket and, oh gosh, like look at that deal. Let me pull out my credit card. And people in B2B just don't make decisions that way, right? In fact, I think to your earlier point, um, they do a lot of their own research. They probably talk to industry peers. They look online to see like what other people are saying, or even like what they're going to find if they do a Google search or these days an AI search, right? And they're not going to like immediately say, well, let me get a hold of one of your salespeople and let's jump on a call. I mean, that's probably the last thing that they want to do,
Yeah. Mhm.
right?
Yeah, if they have all those other areas where they can research and how other people are communicating them as well. So, yeah,
Yeah,
salespeople right now are
yeah,
like one of the last ones, but we know there's like if they get to a meeting, they're more likely to diverse. If they get to once they get there, but like, you got to make sure that they get there, and that's like
yep,
the hardest part is to get them in the room and to talk to them because we know the salespeople are great at what they do. A lot of times,
yeah.
like even talking to clients too, like they forget to even like to have conversations with their salespeople because they just want over here. But I'm like, sometimes your salespeople are like, they know the frequently asked questions. They know what people are dealing with to get the sell. And then if you could take what you're learning from there, and the questions that they're asking in other channels, that like could be part of your messaging and how you answer and now maybe you need a frequently asked question thing on your website when, they can get those answers quickly rather than making a phone call because they're not ready to. So,
That's it. That's it. An FAQs page or an FAQ
mm-hmm.
section, right?
Yep.
Or perhaps even multiple FAQ sections, right? Depending on how diverse the portfolio is, right?
Correct.
Okay, you talked about this earlier, but we've got to go back to it and unpack it a little bit because again, the hint is in the name. Like the foundation is key, right? The foundation is very important. So, talk to us about how strong foundational messaging improves performance across every channel. And I think a lot of people underestimate how important that is.
Yeah, and it really is because like you're probably not a siloed company that does the only thing that and no other people do it. So it really is not only are your competitors out there, and then you're also like having to fight the thousands of other brands that are talking to the same audiences for different reasons. But really, what does make you unique? Like what like, and it's a good exercise to do it, but like based on you and your competitor, why do they sway towards you, like how, and then what are those key messages that you really really want to put out there that like so they already know that, but like really learning like what are your needs, what are your key messages for the time, and that can change. So like based on specific focus parts that you really like your industry really wants a focus on, but like even if you're looking at and saying, what, this department can really use more revenue right now, so let's then take this quarter and focus on like these departments, and that's going to be our key messages. But now we have to make sure everyone's talking these the same ones and not ones that they were talking about 6 months ago. So it really is like, what are we trying to tell them? What makes us unique? How, and now that we have our needs, how are you going to creatively say that in a way that's going to resonate with people, that will make them stop and look and spend more time on your site, spend more time on the ad, and just so just in those ways, like what makes you different, but then also how are you showing those differences in a creative way that's trying to make it stand out.
And I think that in itself is quite the exercise, isn't it? I mean, like,
Mm-hmm.
you could probably speak from experience because a lot of companies like have this misconception about what their uniqueness actually is. And you know
Yeah.
where I'm going with this, right? Like they start either defaulting to features or our uniqueness is our people. They start
Mm-hmm.
like throwing in like generic answers like that, right? When they actually like I wouldn't say fail to see it from this perspective, but what they sometimes don't understand is that the uniqueness lies in your ability to solve the customer's problems and challenges. Like how are you uniquely equipped to deal with that?
And with your audiences, like how different maybe your audiences are. And you have a few different groups
Mhm.
of audiences. And then when you're looking
Yeah,
at them, that like maybe key message 1 and 2 really hits home here, but not really over here in this audience. So now we need to like shift our focus. And for these audiences, we need to really hone in on different ways we could say this, these key messages.
yeah, yeah. That's right. That's right. Okay, so in our previous conversation, you mentioned something along the lines of Aligning paid campaigns with earned, owned, and social media assets reduces the friction in the customer journey and increases recall when audiences are ready to convert. I know that was a lot of marketing
Yeah.
speak, but please, please elaborate on that.
Yes, and it goes back to the point is, even though we're ready to go to a paid campaign, like what we keep on like wanting to make sure that people usually don't convert on the first ad exposure that they see. So you really, really do want to make sure that there are so many other ways that they can get to that information. Advertising helps, but like if you look at what your journey is, and really it's a great exercise if you don't have a customer journey like laid out on paper, and really and looking at that not just for paid media channels, but also like here's what we're doing foundational, like the owned media, and then here's what earned media is doing that they're really pushing out, and here's their focus. But like people can see an ad, and again, they might not be ready to click on an ad for a variety of reasons, but they know, what, I'm going to go Google them later and get back to it when I have time or in that moment. Because again, especially if they're on platform seeing an ad, they don't want to just hop off to every click available, to them. They want to stay on the platform. So they see an ad, they might Google, the company later, and then organically they're going to probably get to your homepage. But if the homepage doesn't have anything to do with what you just told them, then we're going to lose them, so they're going to visit a website. Then they might go on LinkedIn and they might read a thought leadership article from, one of the executives. But if they're also not talking about that, we're losing them. But if we know if that's one of our key message points, and that's a focus of what that thought leadership piece is, because we know we're going to be including these key messages, then it resonates, and then it brings them back over to the website to be like, oh, you know what, I saw that ad and now I see, the president talking about this, and it does make sense seeing it from a person point of view, so reading thought leadership, they're checking LinkedIn, even, we always have people review their organic channels. Like even like, is it something that we should be changing your cover photos on that resonates? Is it something where you already have your organic strategy, but we're having this marketing campaign over here? Can we make sure we integrate, a couple posts a week also to include, some of the marketing messages to make sure that we're hitting this audience as well, and then you're talking to peers. So if you have their salespeople on the ground, if you have your executive leadership team visiting things, are they also like told, like, here's some like key points that make sure that you're also including in your conversations, just so like at the end of the day that they're like, okay, if someone says the elevator pitch for your company, like it's more resonant if you know that they're hearing it from different angles. It becomes your pitch.
Yep, for sure. Andrea, I hate to do this, but like this is totally going to sound like marketing 101, but let's clear the air on this, because I know there's probably some marketers out there that are ashamed to admit they don't know the difference, but just run it past us one more time. The difference between owned, earned, and paid media.
Yeah.
Please.
So I like to refer. Yeah. So, I, back in my last agency, I was the activation director, which was overseeing owned, earned, paid, and previous experience in PR too. So what's nice about me as media director for my agency is I do see that fuller picture, and we are the first. And even though everyone's just like, why aren't you taking clients' money? When I'm like, no, if we own media is like the foundational house. So think of all your communication channels that you build. So like your website, organic channels would be, also, helping with owned, all your communication materials, your sales materials, everything like that, where you're just like those communication materials that are going out in the world and that they're seeing that the client owns and can update. And then earned media is like if you work with a communications team internally, or if you work with a PR team, but really trying to get those messages out there. Earn is sort of not free, but you also you pay PR people, but it's when you're really trying to do like press events, or you put press releases out there in hopes that the TV channels and the newspapers and whatnot will pick up your story. You don't have a full, you can't tell them exactly what to put in the story, but they might pull quotes from your spokesperson. And so you're going to try to get out in the news media and doing it that way. So it's sort of like if you have big events, if you have like big mergers and acquisitions, you want to work with like getting those out and getting the paid media, because what people look, the consumers look, and like B2B audiences too, they read the news, they trust the news. And if it comes from there, it's, like you feel like you're, like they're like, okay, not only do I have trust in this company, but what I'm reading too from news outlets that I trust are also validating. And then paid is where we come in, where it's just like, how do we like make sure we are targeting your audiences and putting it to the right people in paid spaces. Some of our paid media doesn't look like paid media. So we have a big thing with content marketing, where we are writing articles, we are writing, interviews, and you are showing up on TV and in those third party areas, where what I like about content marketing is we get to write the full story. So you have, and it looks and feels like it's part of the publishing company. It is approved by, like USA Today and, those type of networks, but you get that full space where you get to write it. So, yeah.
Fantastic. No, thanks for clearing the air on that one. Like, because again, these are some terms that I've seen people just throw around loosely, and I'm like, I always keep asking myself, like, do you guys actually even know what the difference is, right? And it's important. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't think to, because again, they might be different departments of the client, but they might not think to bring people in the room. But if we're doing in a campaign, and it's best to have like everything work together, to even know from a marketing side of view what the PR strategy is, because if we know you're having a big PR event, why not let that soar, and then we will start marketing right after, like building on that momentum and making sure we're assisting and aligning with that.
Yeah. No, that's it. All right. Buckle up, because this question is going to be pretty meaty. This one's pretty meaty. All right. So let's talk about, you've brought it up already, but like, something that B2B marketing teams should focus on, such as long-lasting assets. And when I say long-lasting assets, we're talking about websites, like you said earlier, executive visibility and thought leadership. So 2 questions here. So why do you think these often outperform short-term paid campaigns, and how can marketers leverage these assets to maximize paid media ROI?
Yes. So paid media is, we're not always in market, so like, we're either on or we're off. But what's nice about those other assets are that they can live on. So if you're looking at SEO, for instance, if you have, long form videos and testimonials available on your website, those type of things are going to be so much more, like not more important, but like really important, where then like what we like to do too, especially if you have like a content marketing strategy, or if we see videos that are really, really performing well organically, or like how can then we repurpose that for ads, like, like clips of the testimonial that we see. But really is, you want stuff to live longer, and one of the things we like to do with content marketing strategies, where we might pay and work with a direct publisher like USA Today to have that article in. But what's best is also to repurpose that article and make it live on your website as well, because it will keep on also driving traffic to your website. The SEO is, great. You're putting your key points in, but USA might, eventually take that off your page where it doesn't live there anymore. But you just want to make sure that these things live here, and it drives, to those type of assets. So anything that you can think about search, like anything with YouTube and video showing up, it will always show up on Google searches, and everything like that will be able to live on.
It sounds almost like you're saying, like, try to get more juice out of the squeeze, right?
Yeah. We learned too. Yep. So we do, if you have like let's say clients have blog pages, one of the first things that we like to look at too is what blogs are resonating and hitting home. And like, you'll see like there's some that are just high up there. And then what you want to do is be like, why is this resonating? Does this focus on the key message we need to what can we then, how can we repurpose that into different assets? So we would take content marketing articles or blogs that we see that are really like good, and be like, we got to do a video of this. We have to go in and do like, like take these points and put them in snippets and do an ad campaign based on those.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh boy. We're we're approaching the love it or hate it territory. And you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Metrics, metrics,
Yes.
metrics, metrics. And we can go down a really, really deep rabbit hole with this one, but let's keep it like top level, right? But based on everything that we've been talking about, right, in this conversation, what are some of the key metrics that you would say B2B marketing teams, you guys should be paying attention to these?
Yes. Anything where we can integrate within a CMS and not just look at the end goal, but what we're doing is like what are the metrics of their like of awareness? What are those main metrics? And people might just think of impressions, but there's also many different ways too. It's just like if you do a survey, like a baseline survey prior to going into market and getting the lay of the land and seeing how people feel about your brand, seeing people of what they know about, like what you need them to know about. And then you go into market and then after market, like within 8 to 12 months later, you go and then you retest that same survey and you see how you move the needle. So then it turns just from measuring impressions, for an awareness, but like you're really like, not only do we hit them, but they're also listening and understanding. And here's the data that proves that. So things like that, time on site, knowing that they're reading, that they're really looking into it. They're not just a click, and you got the website click. Content downloads, if they're really looking at those things that are like what's in it for them, not what's in it for us. And then return visitors, are they coming back? Because usually like if they're in consideration phases, they're not going to make the choice right off the gate. But if they return, and then other things that we're looking for in that is like brand lift, ad lift, is that if we are making a difference where like doing like lift studies where you serve the content and then you see like if for people who didn't see this content, like are they resonating less or more? And so then you're really knowing that the people that are seeing your content are actually paying attention and listening. So therefore we're moving. So definitely different from just like CTR and leads and that, but like in every stage,
Yeah.
like what makes them trust you more? What makes them consider you more? How are they like going deeper in those funnels?
And it's very interesting that you didn't say lead conversion, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and it's great how you laid that all out and explained it. That look, back to what you were saying at the beginning of this conversation, that it's not just about the lead conversion, especially in such a complex ecosystem. You need to talk about building that trust, getting them a little bit closer to understanding what it is you do and making them ultimately choose you over who else is out there in the market, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
there's so many like nuances, but also complexities involved in that process.
Yeah. And we know that when we hit them with those, when we are ready to hit them with those, now it's
Yeah,
time to take an action. We know if they did those other steps first, that conversion rate is much higher than if we try to just made them
right.
convert the first time around.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Andrea, get up on your soapbox for this next one. What is a status quo in your area of expertise that you passionately disagree with and why?
I would say the biggest misconception I see is treating paid media as a primary growth engine rather than the amplifier. I think
Mm,
it goes back to that. I think right when they say, okay, we got a budget for paid media, let's go, we're going to see results, rather than looking at it as just like, we know exactly what like we need to say. We want an outreach to say it in, because once they hear this and once they know this and once they trust us,
yeah.
like it's
Mm.
going. So like really looking at that, like paid media is not the solver and the creator of that, but it's just amplifying that. So
Yeah, it's important, but it's a component. It's one component
mhm.
in
Yep.
the overall ecosystem, and it's one piece of the puzzle. I mean, like throw in whatever metaphors you want, right? Absolutely.
Yeah. One of the things you just say is just like paid media. It doesn't, it's not going to fix a weak strategy. It just exposes it faster. It really is, if you don't have that ready to go, then we're just promoting that you don't have it to everywhere else.
Yeah, and that's putting it bluntly, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's almost like building a house, and you have a weak foundation, and then you start like coming up with these putting on these fancy roof tiles, and then you have all this expensive, like looking like window frames, and then just all collapses, right? Like,
Yes,
right, fantastic,
exactly.
Andrea. Thank you so much for coming on. This was such a great conversation, and thanks for sharing your experience and expertise with the listeners. Quick introduction to yourself and how folks out there can get in touch with you.
Yes. Andrea Ness, I am the media director over at DDM Marketing and Communications. Been doing agency life for a little over 25 years. What's the best part that I feel like I'm strong in is because I pretty much touched every department of the agency. So, from the creative side to the account side, over to the, public relations and whatnot. So I really do get that full funnel approach. So, it is a little bit different than other, like maybe media directors out there. We're just like, we will take your money. Let us go and show you some conversions. But it really is like, we want to make sure that we are stewards of your dollars, and we want to make sure that what we put out there is going to be successful. So, so really focusing on that overall integrated strategy. DDM offers all the components that, one of the reasons why I strongly wanted to work with DDM for quite a while is because we are a big team. We have all the departments, and we are able to just, be able to shoot the ideas off there. But when media is in the room too, we would be the first one to be like, let's focus on building that house first, and then come to us in a little bit when you guys got it ready, and then we'll push media. So, yeah.
Absolutely. A true Renaissance woman in every regard. But once again, Andrea, thank you so much for coming on the show. Take care, stay safe, and talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Bye for now.